Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Local Government Energy Audit Virtual Audit webinar. And today's webinar is brought to you by New Jersey's Clean Energy Program and New Jersey's Board of Public Utilities. This webinar will be recorded as well. My name is Amanda Newman, and I'm an Outreach Account Manager for New Jersey's Clean Energy Program, and I will be acting as facilitator for today's event. First, I would like to take care of a little bit of housekeeping. We are going to allow the presenter to go through the slides in their entirety, but throughout the presentation, please feel free to type in your questions via the control panel on your screen. We will address your questions at the end of the presentation, and if we do not get to your question live, we will respond to you directly via email. And speaking of presenters today, we are joined by Amanda Munch, who is an account manager for the Local Government Energy Audit Program within the New Jersey's Clean Energy Program. She will be providing details on the Local Government Energy Audit and what entails a virtual energy audit. We also have Musa Traore, one of Local Government Energy Audit's auditors, as well as Mike Manzik, New Jersey's Clean Energy Program's regional account manager for North Jersey. As a point of further introduction, or as many of you on the call may know, TRC administers New Jersey's Clean Energy Program on behalf of the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities. And before we get started, we would like to first say that we understand what a challenging time this is for everyone, especially schools. We want to emphasize that New Jersey's Clean Energy Program is doing everything it can to support you during this time and through the recovery. Please know that, as always, outreach account managers, program staff, and case managers are available to you to answer your questions. As all of you can appreciate, things are changing day by day. We may not have all of the answers, but we will do our best to get you the latest information. So with that bit of background, I will go ahead and hand the speaking duties over to Amanda so that she can take us through the presentation. Amanda, it's all yours.
Thanks, Amanda, for the introduction. Again, my name is Amanda Munch. I'm an LGEA account manager for the program. For this webinar, we'll go over the structure of New Jersey's clean energy programs, and then we'll dive into the LGEA and our virtual audit offerings and next steps. So for some background, like Amanda said, New Jersey's Clean Energy Program is administered by the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities Division of Clean Energy. The programs are funded by the societal benefits charge line item on your bills, so that is what pays into the program's funding. Our program goals are to educate local governments, businesses, and residents on energy efficiency and encourage behavior change to reduce the costs and help out the environment for the end goal of meeting our governor's goal of 100% clean energy by 2050. This is how we can work to meet those goals: customer education, energy conservation, energy efficiency, distributed energy resources, and renewable energy. So this slide shows the broad offering of programs in the entire state for your reference, and we just want to particularly note residential, since that could benefit listeners with their home needs. So now we get into the LGEA. The local government energy audit is offered to local government entities like school districts, municipalities, state agencies, and 501c3 nonprofit organizations. So it's a walkthrough energy audit program that provides a profile of building energy use through analysis of utility data and on-site equipment, with the end result being a detailed report per building. The cost is completely subsidized by the program, again, by that SBC charge you're already paying into, and we'll go into more of what that includes on the next slide. So to get started, first, preliminary data is gathered. So that includes the application form with your most recent 14 months of utility data for all buildings. The form also asks for your building characteristics as well, like square footage, occupancy, things of that nature. So we ask for these characteristics plus the utility data so we can create an Energy Star portfolio manager account for the benchmarking. More detail on that later, as well as use this data to check that usage to make sure it makes sense with what we're seeing on site at the facility inspection. From there, we perform a high-level evaluation of distributed energy measures and identify energy conservation measures in a report that will be delivered to you per building. So getting into the LGEA virtual energy audit. Typically, we would go out in person, but in these times, we've found solutions for data gathering that can be done virtually. Depending on the availability of staff and building access, we're finding levels of remote auditing, which I'll explain briefly here. And once an applicant is in contact with us or has an application in, we also explain throughout that process and evaluate the feasibility of the virtual audit through conversations. So first, full virtual audit. A staff member or, hopefully a facilities person with building knowledge can access the building and is willing to walk us through on a device on a video call. So they would be our eyes, and this involves navigating to each room of the building, pointing the camera at equipment and the labels, and pausing so we can take notes and pictures throughout the walkthrough. If that's not available, we can do a limited remote information sharing audit. If there is no staff and there's no building access due to the state shutdown, but there is access to floor plans, equipment lists, electrical and architectural drawings, we will perform analysis remotely, and we can finish up with anything we couldn't get from that info once we can get back out on site in person. And if that's not available, we can do the utility analysis only. So that's provided on the front end anyway. We will do the benchmarking and utility analysis while the audit is on hold. To explain benchmarking a little, that uses the US Department of Energy's Energy Star Portfolio Manager website to create an account. So we would create that account for you and enter the utility information by month per building to provide an overall picture of use and compare the building's performance against similar buildings in the nation. So if we can't do the building analysis, we would still do the utility analysis in the background. Moving on to the next slide, I'll discuss how we evaluate for which kind of remote audit would make sense for the buildings. So evaluation for a virtual audit. Again, this is something we'd be discussing throughout the entire process, and just want to emphasize that this is a very cooperative effort. In our experience so far, we've had very engaged staff at the facilities, and that's always been helpful, very helpful. This presentation focuses more on the formal process post-application approval. So here we would send along a brief questionnaire asking to identify the appropriate staff that might be handling the virtual audit, including their availability, some questions about technology, because you would be walking us through with your phone or tablet. Following this, we would have a call to go through the information that you filled out and figure out what kind of remote auditing can take place together. This is just a visual of the whole process. Next steps. So for those on the call interested in LGEA, I would say the first step is the information gathering, like we said earlier, and some internal coordination. We're here throughout every step in the process, so please don't ever hesitate to reach out. We can help you before you send the application. We'll be helping you throughout the entire process. So there's a lot of back and forth and cooperation and coordination with you and ourselves throughout the virtual audit process. And I believe I turn this back over to Amanda.
Great. Thanks, Amanda. There's two of us. Thank you for giving that presentation. Now for the folks on the line, please feel free to type in some of your questions using that question box while I go over just a few more resources for you to be able to access during this time. So right now, the Clean Energy Learning Center is a very valuable resource to you because we keep all of our recorded webinars in this learning center. It's an online education tool, so it has courses and videos. And one particular recorded webinar that's on there is how to fill out an LGEA application form. So that might be of interest to you. It's not a long webinar, but you can just scroll through some of those and see if any of those recorded webinars look interesting to you. We also take recommendations on what kinds of webinars that contractors and BAs and all sorts of people that we work with want to see and want to learn about with New Jersey's Clean Energy Program. So if you have any recommendations, you can absolutely reach out to us with that. Also, you can go to our website. The way that you would contact us via email is outreach@newjerseycleanenergy.com. Also, you can sign up for our newsletters and listservs. Those give you up-to-date information on New Jersey's Clean Energy Program, and you can also follow us on social media. This is Amanda Munch's and Musa Traore's contact information. So please feel free to reach out to them, as well as our outreach@newjerseycleanenergy.com email address to ask any questions. We are more than available to help you and answer your questions. Now I'm just going to unmute Mike and Musa. Mike, do we see any questions coming through the question portal?
I've got a bunch of questions that just popped up, and I'll be happy to start reading them through for Amanda Munch and Musa to some answers. Okay, the first one that came in is, do any New Jersey BPU programs support the ongoing collection of utility data and ongoing benchmarking annually? I think that might not so much be an LGEA question as it's part of the overview that was provided earlier on in the presentation. What we're looking at is the benchmarking program itself as part of the New Jersey Clean Energy Program portfolio of programs. And that's in fact, yes, offered to the customers, Lori.
Yeah, for that question, I can say that that's the second step of the LGEA program. So after the application process, the benchmarking process is the second phase of the program, LGEA program. And then
Mike, I would just ask them to clarify if they are confused on the process or if they're asking for some kind of program that would help them gather the bills.
I think that's more the issue of the question.
Okay.
It's referred to the step that Musa makes reference to is the stage that we understand it within the terms of LGEA. But the question is, does the program support the ongoing collection? Okay, the clarification just came in. Is it a one-time benchmarking, or is it conducted on, I guess it's in reference to the LGEA. Is it a one-time benchmarking, or is it conducted on an ongoing basis?
So we do the benchmarking based off of the 14 months data. So it's a snapshot of that data that you provide us. And at the final presentation, once we deliver the reports, we encourage the entity to keep up with that. And Musa, do you have anything to add to that?
I think you have said everything. The only thing I have to add to that, like you said, so when we receive your 14 months bills, we look at if you don't have like a prior account in Portfolio Manager. If you already have an account, we will ask you to provide your login credentials. So we will use that account to update your account. If you don't have any old account, we will create a new account for you, and then after we will send you all the credentials you need. And then we will give you all the information you need so you can keep up updating the account by a monthly basis. The reason why we are doing this benchmarking is it helps the customer to track the energy consumption in a square foot basis.
Good answer. I've got some more questions here. Is the video recorded or only live? Will the customer get a copy of the full video if it is recorded? Now, I assume that's the video of the audit.
The video is being recorded. We ask for the customer's consent before we hit the record button during it. I'm not sure if we provide that recording. We might have to get back to you on that. Musa, do you have any insight?
Yeah, this is a transparent work we do. As you said, we always ask the customer first before start recording. So, and when we record, we gather this information and we keep it. If the customers need it, we can provide to him. There is no, that's
Great.
possible.
Okay, great.
Next question. Does the customer need to have a tablet or phone, or does TRC/BPU provide that?
No, the TRC does not provide any logistical need for the customer. So that's why we always ask the customer if they can have their own stuff to do the virtual audit. It can be like a tablet or anything, any gadget that can help to do this. So we don't provide that.
Okay. Thank you. Next question. Questioner states that I'm new. How do I know my school has already had an LGEA in the past?
To that, I would say just call us because we have access to that information.
Okay, and there's a follow-on question to that. If we did have an LGEA in the past, how can I get a copy of it?
If you are the person at the site, let's say school, I or someone else on the team can send a copy of that over to you. And also we can note you're eligible to come back through every 3 years and encouraged to update the information.
Also, I think, Amanda, aren't there copies of past audits available on the website too, the njcleanenergy.com under the LGEA section?
There are back through 2016. Anything prior to that, they would have to reach out.
Excellent. Okay, we got another question here. Do you expect to have auditors be able to come on site soon, since the governor has now permitted non-essential construction to proceed?
If the buildings are open, until we receive guidance from the BPU that we can have our staff go out in person, we are still conducting virtual audits, if that answers that question. So while you might be open, we might not have received that go ahead to go out in person.
Okay, another question, a little different tact here. It says, do you hire third-party energy consultants to perform the audits, benchmarking, and reports?
No, we do not.
We don't do that.
Okay. If the customer has already participated in direct install program, can they still get the LGEA?
They can. We would take that into consideration with the audit, and depending on how recently they went through that, we might just have a conversation on if it makes sense to do the audit, or are we just going to recommend that they go through DI. But if it's part of an ESIP, then it makes sense to throw that building in, and we would use the direct install information to help us work together in LGEA.
Next one is, what is the timeline before submitting an application and the actual audit?
So time from application to the audit in these current circumstances, I just want to clarify.
Yes.
Okay, so that's kind of murky because it depends on how quickly we can get the information, and we're doing things very step by step right now. So it can be fairly quick, but it really depends on the back and forth between the customer and us, and how quickly we can get that information, and if we can get all the information under these circumstances, because we're delivering audit reports that are the same as the ones that we provided under normal circumstances. So again, if we can't get all of that information, we might have to wait, which could add to the timeline since we're not sure when we can get out there. So I know that doesn't answer firmly, but that's my answer. And we have to rely on a lot of back and forth and cooperation with the customer.
Okay. Along that same line, I guess the question came, will the report look the same as a regular audit? So I guess what you said is basically it's the same kind of a document, right?
Yep.
So,
yeah. There's no COVID reports and regular reports. It's going to be the same report of the same quality.
Okay. Another question here. How long does a virtual audit last?
that's a good question. So for that question, like Amanda said before, this will require like a collaboration with the customer. And this depends first to the size of the building we are auditing. If it's like a small building, bigger buildings, so it's depends to that. Also the information we are receiving from the customer. So the report time, the VA timelines is basically gonna depend to the customer also. So how the customer is working with us to get through whatever we need.
To add, yeah, it can take, we work with the customer's schedule. So if they have the stamina to do a couple hours, that's fine. If they can't do that big of a chunk, we'll offer smaller chunks for the audit. We're flexible.
Okay. I got a few more questions coming over here. Does it matter what type of device the site staff has? The question is, what kind of, is it a phone? Does it have to be an iPad or a?
Yeah, so it doesn't matter as long as it has video capabilities that are decent quality. And Musa, I know we've run into.
Yeah, preferably I will say iPad. iPad is the best advice that we can give for a customer. If they have the iPad, that's the best thing, because so far we have conducted a few VA, and then those were done with iPad, with the customer iPad. So I will advise for the iPad. But
if it is an Android, so we're using, the technology we're using is Microsoft Teams. So as long as you're able to download that and you have video capability, that's fine. And we can walk you through downloading Teams on your device.
Just a couple more questions. Related to this last one, I guess, what kind of technology precautions do we need to take? I'm guessing the customer's asking that from their own perspective.
so let's say the customer is interested in VA audit. We have a process to educate the customer how to do this. We will have a meeting before the VA, so to set up, how to set up this so if it's iPad or phones, whatever. If they want to go with Microsoft Teams, Skype, or Google Hangouts, so we will define that, and from that we will educate them how to do it before we start the VA itself.
Okay, thank you. And what I think it looks like the last question here, it's kind of a follow. Oh no, I'm sorry. There's two more. Is there a minimum size, like as in square foot or energy consumption, for participation in the audit?
The building needs to average over 200 kW over the last 14 months. So, but we do have flexibility towards that. So I would recommend reaching out so you could talk that over to see if it makes sense to add a waiver for buildings that come under that. So it's geared towards buildings that are over 200 kW, but we can work with that depending on the situation.
Okay, and there's no real per square footage type of minimum, though. You're talking about purely electric demand, right?
Yes, so square footage minimum, they might be asking about the entity cap, which I may have glossed over. So for square footage considerations, just taking into account the total square footage, if it's over a certain number, there's a cost on our end associated with the square footage, right? So if it's a very large submission, a very large entity, it might reach that $100,000 entity cap. So if that happens, there's also options. We can request approval from the BPU to include all of them, or we can break it up into phases. So I'm not sure if that was part of the question, but just wanted to explain that as well.
I think that's an important consideration, especially when you get some of the larger, organizations that might want to have a campus type of facility looked at. That's good information, Amanda. Okay, and then what I think here's the last question. Is there a program like this for my home to help me lower my residential costs?
Mike, I think I'll let you answer that. I'm not quite sure.
There are certainly programs available on the residential side, which we will get back to you on and answer directly offline. Okay, I think that, Amanda Newman, I think that's run the course of the questions.
Okay, great. Yeah, Musa, Mike, and Amanda, thank you so much for that. I gained a lot of value just from hearing you talk about the virtual audit. So if anyone on the line has further questions later on, please feel free to reach out to us at outreach@njcleanenergy.com, or you have Amanda and Musa's contact information. You're more than welcome to reach out to them if you have any further questions or inquiries about a virtual audit. So with that, please be on the lookout for this webinar that will be posted on our Clean Energy Learning site. And if anyone has any other questions, again, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you very much for your time and spending a few minutes with us today.